A bit, but we're going to get started again.
I'm here to help.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I want you to get up and throw your napkin.
Welcome back, and thank you. We're going to continue our item on item 22 on California Freight Mobility Plan. I want to thank again Bruce Tatera for giving us that presentation, Kenneth Cow for starting the conversation. Now we're going to continue that conversation with our commissioner colleagues first. Commissioners, on the Freight Mobility Plan? Any comments on freight mobility? Fran, I almost had to say going once, twice, three times.
Oh, my
Sorry,
gosh,
we were distracting her.
Fran Inman, Commissioner Inman, please.
I think you guys did that on purpose. Commissioner Arp was talking to me, and I almost missed it. But anyway, Bruce and Comey and all the work that the Caltrans team has done, thank you. A couple of things. I think if you just look at the number of appendices in their draft proposals, it clearly points out how complex the whole supply chain, goods movement, freight, whatever we want to label, we want to put on it, is. And I think if we ask our team, they would tell you that the deeper they got into it, the more they realized that they didn't know. And I, too, am a constant student of the supply chain. So we have lots of partners, and I just want to encourage you to continue on that journey of really doing as much due diligence as you possibly can, because not only is it complex, but it's also a moving target. And I think as planners and the process that we all go through, unfortunately, the real world and the lightning pace with which goods move is a much different dynamic. So it's going to take all of us sharing whatever intel we can and teaching each other whatever it is we know and whatever perspective we hear, and we can share and really find the common ground. But thanks to Comey and Bruce and your whole team. There is a website, and I'm going to encourage all of you to jump in there. In terms of the materials, I think one thing I'd like to suggest, and I know you all are on a pretty tight time frame, you don't have a lot of latitude in terms of extra days, but we do have a lot of partners here, and in some of our regions, they joke about being in graduate school on these topics. They've spent so many hours on these topics. So to the extent we can get materials out a little bit earlier so that our freight advisory committee and all of our agency partners have time to really digest it, because there is an awful lot of material there. Also, if I could ask, FHWA has a series called Talking Freight. Unfortunately, one of those was this morning, so we didn't get to listen in. But they do record those. So today, the freight discussion was about the role of freight in a complete street discussion. So I think that's going to be an important discussion for all of us to have as well. So if we could encourage you maybe to put that link to the FHWA webcasts, I've found them to be helpful. And we may at some point want to emulate that, if we can figure out a way to do that, to really have some good discussions going so that we can share from each other. But I think it's so important that we do build on all the work. I know in the first few chapters, in reading the material, I think you all have done a pretty good job of talking about the journey that we've already been on. But I think as we go forward, I'm confident that there will be a role for freight in the sun of MAP 21, whatever that ends up being called. And so I think one message I think California we need to do is really communicate how many resources we've already invested in what a lot of us say is moving America's freight. So to the extent I know that it's in there, we don't call it out specifically, and I totally understand this is a plan for the future, but I'm really anxious for us to get some credit for the Clean Air Action Plan that we've done. We have 80+% emission reduction with our port truck plan in LA and Long Beach. So if there's a way for us to really highlight the gazillion dollars we've spent on the public and the private and our bond dollars all collectively, I think that will ultimately serve us well, as this not only is a tool that we will use in our state, but also we've structured it so that any state requirement for a freight plan that will serve us well there too. So I think those would be my comments. And just in closing, I think these workshops, it's really going to be important that we get as many of the folks from the trenches to really have the time to read what we've put together and where we are and to get the suggestions. So I'm not sure exactly how your outreach will be, but I think it's probably some different partners. So I think, whether it's our port partners, our trucking partners, our short line rail partners, our beneficial cargo owners, as many folks as we can bring to the table to really have us have a dynamic discussion will be great. So thank you.
Commissioner Inman, thank you. And I'm going to, Commissioner Frommer, your mic is on. Did you want to weigh in on this as well?
No, it just won't turn off.
Oh, it won't turn on. Good. That's because we all want to hear from you, Commissioner Frommer. You're right. Okay. Anyone else on this topic?
That's weird.
Why don't we do this then? Perhaps, colleagues, we might want to direct our staff to develop a letter that we can send to the legislature on this topic. Fran, does that sound like the right direction?
Well, yeah, I just want to encourage everybody to stay engaged. I think it is important for all of us, to the extent that we can learn from each other and we can keep shining the light on this. I think it's very, very important for our state's economy and for our communities that we get it right. So I would encourage us to do that.
Okay. So it sounds like perhaps we don't even need a letter for now, because I'm not hearing that. So yeah, why don't we wait on timing then, if there's no one else who wants to weigh in on the commission. Thanks again for the update. Fran, thanks for weighing in as our expert on freight. And we're going to move along. Item 23 is is a presentation on our active transportation program. This presentation will be by Jenny Ward-Waller with Safe Routes to Schools, and I believe she may be accompanied by Jessica Meany, her Southern California Policy Director. Jeannie, welcome to the Commission.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Good afternoon. I'm Jeannie Ward-Waller. I'm the California Advocacy Organizer for the Safe Routes to School National Partnership. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Great, and I'm here to talk to you about active transportation, and I'm going to give you kind of a rundown of the numbers, do a scan of the state, and it's appropriate. This is on the deadline of the applications for the active transportation program. So thank you very much for having me. Let's see if I can operate this. Okay. Quickly, just about the national partnership. We have 5 staff in California that work on policy for active transportation. We are a national organization, and we have a network of partners all over the country. Our mission in California, as you can see here, is to use school travel, transportation to school, really as a catalyst to create healthy communities, healthy active communities around the state. So we focus on school travel, but we see that as a real in to talk to the public about active transportation more largely and why it's vital to our communities. This is just an overview of what I'm going to talk to you about. I'm going to give you a lot of numbers, so bear with me. I think you do have a handout of my presentation, so you can go back and review them again, and all the citations are at the end, so if you want to weed into this in extreme detail, please feel free. But so be patient with me. I'm going to give you some of the travel trends, talk about safety risks, highlight some of the really key benefits of these projects. talk to you about Safe Routes to School specifically, and then focus on the active transportation program at the end and a little bit of the work we've been doing there. My objective today is really to try to convey to you why these projects are so vital and the benefits that they do bring to our communities. So they're small projects, they're smaller dollar than a lot of the other big projects you guys see here more often, but they really do have huge benefits to our communities. All right, so just starting with a view of the statewide numbers, the mode share numbers, you can see according to the California Household Travel Survey, 18% of our trips are walk and bike. That's actually double the rate from 2000, so these trips are increasing in popularity. And in addition, 4.4% of trips are transit, and typically 80 to 85% of transit trips, people are walking or biking to get to those trips. So that's additional walk and bike trips that get counted as transit because that's the primary mode. I would be remiss not to tell you about school trips, since that's what the Safe Routes to School National Partnership does. 31% of students walk and bike to school in the state, so that's higher than transportation trips overall. That's also on the rise. And a couple of numbers in that little sidebar. You can see in our urban areas, there are even higher rates of walking and biking. In LA County, 39% of students walk and bike or take transit. And 91% of commuters walk and bike to use transit. The graph on this slide is a national graph based on census data, but it just gives you a bit of a flavor for some of the demographics associated with these trips. The percentages are lower nationally than we have here in California, but you can see that the lowest income travelers are the highest folks that are using active transportation. We're also seeing higher rates of travel among younger adults, lower income Californians, and also minority Californians. Here are some travel trends on driving, but they correlate well to active transportation, so I thought it was important to highlight these. Again, from the Household Travel Survey, we're seeing a decline in the mode share from private vehicles, so it's going down from 86% to 75% over that same period since 2000. You're seeing a lot in the press that fewer and fewer young people are getting driver's licenses or they're waiting longer, so that's another kind of key trend to highlight. And that last bullet highlights kind of the latent demand for walk and bike and transit. We have 60% of trips currently that are 1 mile or less are still driven. So those are trips that can very easily be made by active transportation, yet people are still choosing to get in their cars because of safety risk or it's just more convenient. So there's things we can do there to make that easier in our communities. This last statistic in the sidebar is something I saw recently out of San Joaquin County. 20% in San Joaquin County of all adults do not have a driver's license. So there's a lot of walking and biking and transit that's happening there. These are the negative numbers, unfortunately, but I do have to highlight them because they outpace the mode share numbers. 23% of fatalities and serious injuries in California are pedestrians and bicyclists. Higher, certainly in LA County, some really scary numbers. I think LA County is one of the worst in the whole country in terms of safety risks for bicyclists and pedestrians. And then school-age children, sadly, are victims of collisions at higher rates than other users. There's just a big, scary figure that shows what the cost of that is to California. And I spotlighted Massachusetts. I saw recent press about how Massachusetts is using their HSIP money to really focus on this issue in the short term and identify some key strategies that are most effective. We use the term complete streets a lot, so I just wanted to have a quick mention of how we define complete streets. I think often it's thought of as to redesign the entire streetscape. Really, it's a really expensive improvement, but in fact, we really see complete streets as a context-appropriate enhancement of the streetscape, just to make it safe enough for all users to travel. And it doesn't have to be expensive. Often, if it's done in terms of just restriping at the maintenance phase, it can be extremely cost-effective. in terms of providing for all users. And this example is of a road diet. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about design, but this is a good example of a really easy change in restriping, and you can see the change is just going from 4 lanes to 3 lanes with a center turn lane, and this specific design implementation reduces crashes by 29%, makes it safer for everyone, including motorists in the roadway, and up to 2,000 or 20,000 daily vehicles. It's been seen to have no effect on congestion. So I want to talk a little bit about the economic numbers because I think they're striking, the benefits of these projects. One is that there are greater jobs per $1 million spent on created by these projects versus road-only projects. I think that's a really interesting statistic. In addition, neighborhoods that have invested in bike and pedestrian infrastructure see much higher property values and also increased sales revenues. Here's just an example from Lancaster where pretty minimal public investment of only $11 million spurred significant private investment, growth and in jobs and business and in revenue. So I think that's valuable to highlight. And then there's certainly savings to households, to individual Californians. We see in LA County that 22% of household income is spent on transportation costs, which is huge, and I think that could probably be a similar figure for most of the state. And yet studies have shown that bicyclists and pedestrians tend to shop closer to home. They tend to spend money in their community rather than driving farther afield to spend their money, and they save on transportation costs, so they have more of that money to spend in their local economy. And this last figure is an interesting one, an aggregated figure from both Chicago and New York City that shows the potential savings on the order of billions to households, to individuals from transportation costs. Climate benefits are, of course, important, and I think they're pretty obvious with these projects. We are getting people out of their cars, getting them to use low-polluting modes, but it is helpful to quantify what kinds of numbers we could see. There was a study out of San Francisco that showed on a regional level we could see upwards of 8 to 14% in greenhouse gas reductions for making these improvements on a regional scale. Certainly on the short trips where you have lots of cold starts of your vehicle, we can see the greatest reductions. So 20% potential VMT changes when we're shifting those short trips, and significant greenhouse gas reductions there. And then we really have been focusing on how can we leverage transit investments, those higher dollar investments, to also help with greenhouse gas reductions. And one way is to make sure people can walk and bike to transit, and then they're not driving and parking in a very expensive parking structure that's also using parking in public investment and minimizing their driving again there. That last statistic is out of a UCLA study that recently came out that showed that these improvements tend to be the most cost effective over their life in reducing greenhouse gases. Finally, just quickly on safe routes to school, I think it's important to highlight the seriousness of these projects. We think of them as, we're just trying to get kids active and healthy in our suburbs. In reality, it's a much more serious program than that, and in a lot of our urban areas, kids are walking and biking at very high rates. They're subject to high safety risks. They're walking in areas of gang violence. They're getting hit and killed. So we are trying to address all of those issues with safe routes to school and provide particularly our low-income students. We know it's critical for them to get access to their education, for the next generation to have economic opportunity, and so we see this as really an economic opportunity type of program. We're getting kids safely to school and giving them a leg up and keeping them out of prison. So just, again, some numbers in terms of congestion related to school traffic, the number of kids that live close to their school but yet are still driven is really significant. And safe routes to school is really having some very positive effects where the projects have been implemented in our schools so far. So it's a terrific program. Finally, I'll end with just some quick takeaways from the active transportation program. We've been working all over the state very closely with Caltrans and the CTC, and we commend staff from both agencies on their great work on this program. But we are definitely seeing huge demand for these funds, these limited funds. Caltrans is potentially expecting 1,000 applications for $360 million, so we definitely think that there's huge need there. And as my colleague Jessica mentioned earlier, we are seeing some barriers to investments and getting projects ready to apply for the funding. And just interestingly, we've gotten some private foundations very interested in helping to promote having communities get access to this funding, and that's been an interesting partnership, particularly in LA County. So with that, I think I'll stop there. Contact information is there, and I'd be happy to answer some questions.
Jeannie, first, thank you for the timely and data-based presentation and the handouts as well. I know that always benefits me, and I believe it benefits my colleagues as well. Why don't we open it up for questions to Jeannie or her colleague? Questions? Questions? Yes, Fran Inman and then Jim Gilmetti.
I have a question in terms of pedestrian and bicycle safety. Do your programs include anything in terms of our bicycle partners maybe thinking that the stop signs apply to everybody on that same street? Because we share the streets, and we have either green lights or red lights or stop signs. And the same for our pedestrians, too. I'm sure you've had this where you're the person standing on the corner because the hand is doing this, but you look around and everybody's walking anyway. So what kind of programs do you include? Because I think it's great to get more of us active for a whole bunch of reasons, but at the same time, we have to build into that culture the personal safety. We all own that in terms of being respectful of all the laws and,
Absolutely.
crossing
Yes, absolutely.
when the little man says you can cross.
Absolutely. That's a terrific question, and it's certainly part of Safe Routes to School education is the educational programs in schools. We think that's a critical part of catching children when they are early and teaching them what are the rules of the road, how to travel safely, particularly if they're bicycling and they're in the roadway with vehicles. And I think it's the onus is on all of us. We certainly can't expect school children to be more responsible than the driver who's in their car that's speeding past the school zone. So I think we all make those small judgments and violate laws here and there as we think as we think it's appropriate. But certainly it's critically important. We don't advocate for any unsafe behavior. We think everyone needs to obey the same traffic rules, particularly bicyclists. Thank you.
Fran, thank you. Commissioner Gilmetti?
Jeannie, thank you for the presentation. And I think we all support safe streets, at least. I think the majority, or if not all of the commissioners. As you know, money's tough for transportation, and we've talked about that at length. When I was a kid growing up, we had bicycles. We biked to school, and we had little bicycle licenses that we paid for. I don't know what happened to that program, but would your group be supportive of some sort of a licensing fee that we could go to the Safe Streets program?
It's an idea. It's definitely a good idea. I mean, I agree with you that revenue is a huge issue, and we are looking at what are the innovative ways that we can fund this program. I think there's a DeSaulnier bill this year that's looking at a registration fee that would, be a small fee, but would potentially allow a local jurisdiction to elect
That would come out of a vehicle license fee.
Correct.
Right.
And it's
Which
and
goes
it's
back
discretionary.
to automobiles again, and I guess where I'm coming from, I think bicycles should pay some form. It can't support the whole program. There's no question of that.
Sure.
But right now, there's no funds coming in from the bicycle side.
Well, other than the sales taxes that we are all paying.
Well, but
bicycle
the
sales
automobile
are paying.
guys pay the sales taxes as well. So I mean, there's nothing specifically that comes from the bicycle industry.
I'm not arguing that it's not a good idea. I think because we have climate goals, we have health goals, we are really trying to encourage people to use these modes. I think anything that might potentially be a barrier to more people bicycling, especially our lower income folks, I would discourage, at least until we make it safe enough for everyone to be able to be on the road
So
together.
if Senator DeSaulnier put forward a bill, which I've talked to him about bicycle license fees, you'd support that?
As I said, I don't think I can support at this time anything that would potentially discourage more riders.
This is the problem I'm having with a lot of groups. They want to come to us and they ask for money, and they don't want to put their money where their mouth is, even a small fraction. It doesn't really give you a chance to have a good seat at the table. And as of that, if I don't get support from your groups and others to support a small fee for that, you're not going to get my support.
Well, sir, I would just make the argument that all of us at some point in time are pedestrians. So we all do make use of the streets and roads. Bicyclists are the wear and tear that a bicycle puts on the road or on a bicycle path requires a very small amount of investment.
If there wasn't any gas tax to build the road, you wouldn't have a road to ride on.
Well, local roads are paid for largely out of general funds, if I understand correctly, and we all pay property taxes and sales taxes. Most of the bicycling and walking is done on local roads. So
Yeah, my industry builds more roads than anyone else. I get upset when groups like yours don't want to support even a small little fee to help with this problem. I've talked to Leah, what's her name, out of San Francisco, big bicycle activist, and no one wants to put their money where their mouth is. I mean, we used to pay as a kid $5 for a little license for our bike.
Yeah.
And I think most of us who remember riding bikes when we were kids paid. I don't know what happened to that program, but even a small fee will help.
Why don't we, thank you, Commissioner Gilmetti, and I think Commissioner Fromer may have wanted to weigh in, and Secretary Kelly as well.
Yeah, I want to echo what Commissioner Gilmetti. I say this as a cyclist who rides, typically 100 miles a week. I'm very concerned about safety on the roads, and I have a 9-year-old. I think that I understand the argument about we don't want to discourage people, we want to get them in. But I also think in California, cycling is really making a comeback. And a lot of people are doing it, whether it's for health reasons, whether it's to get around. And I think you can encourage that community to be a part of the solution and having some small fee that then could be leveraged for other dollars to do these improvements. And a lot of communities really are doing good things. And in my community, I'm seeing bike lanes being put in that we've never saw before. There's a lot of focus on safety. A lot of people are really, really getting involved. And I think it's a good time to make that ask. Not everybody can afford it, and there's a way to do that. And it could be like a dog license. Like I'm supposed to get a dog license, right? I have one. Not everyone in my neighborhood has one for their dog. But
For
a
the
lot of
record,
people, I
it's
think,
for
will
his
participate.
dog, not for him.
Just something to think about to get participation, because as I talk to bicyclists, people are really, really concerned about safety. And as you pointed out in your statistics, in Los Angeles, we have had some horrific bicycle accidents that were not the fault of the cyclists. They were just like malicious people. And I think you can get a lot of people in the community who would support some small increment to say, I'm willing to pay that maybe on a yearly basis, buy my bike license. Let's put the money towards safety, and both for pedestrians and bicyclists.
Absolutely. I'm not against it. I would definitely be willing to explore it. It would be interesting to see how it could be done and how much funding it would actually generate. I mean, we're certainly not a bicycle-only group. I think bicycles do generate a lot of controversy. We focus on pedestrians, too. We think those are important trips. That's important infrastructure. I'm not sure if you're going to, be able to fund a pedestrian license. So we would need to, think about some more creative options. But I'm certainly open to it.
User fee on shoes. That's
Okay.
oh, too many. Okay, I'll just use my dad voice because we have too many mics on, so they're not all turning on. Secretary Kelly.
Thank you. I just wondered if you would support robbing a bank for. No, kidding. I really don't want to weigh too deeply into the who funds what category. I just want to provide an observation about the genesis of the active transportation program as we now have it. And the observation that we made when this was first discussed among department staff and agency staff and commission staff at the very beginning was first an observation that we're at a very transformative time for transportation in California. That while historically we've focused much on road improvements and vehicle throughput and safety and mobility out of our transportation system, it's been fairly auto-centric. And I would argue that under AB 32, which was important legislation passed in the middle 2000s, followed by SB 375, we really have seen a greater emphasis on getting more out of our transportation system on the sustainability score, on the livability score. And it's not, and this is really not, I really want to emphasize this is not a top-down program in terms of the state down to the regions. I think the template was set by the regions. Under SB 375, they started to adopt 20 and 30-year transportation plans that said we got to do a menu of investments to achieve mobility, safety, and sustainability objectives. And in general, what we're seeing from those plans are greater investments in public transit, greater investments in preservation, fix-it-first policies, and greater investment in bike and pedestrian facilities. The policy question for the state is how do we respond to that trend? And what we attempted to do in this program was really consolidate what were small peripheral programs aimed at bike and pedestrian improvements, but they were sort of dink and dunk programs, all administered differently, all administered at different times of the year, different entities doing them, and the idea was to consolidate those and then dump more of our federal money into the program and focus on active transportation and bike and ped. I just would make the observation, too. So, one, it's a program where the state is responding as a partner to achieving a broader suite of objectives in transportation. I think that's very important, and I really commend the work that Mitch and the CTC have done to develop the program. And the second point I was going to make is just that the funding that we've used for this program, the active transportation program as we have it now, is largely funds that were made available by both state and federal entities that are not for traditional transportation projects. Yeah. Federal TE dollars and other things were compelled into this program, and so I just say it's not like we said, hey, let's take SHOP dollars and dump it into the active transportation program. Really, it was taking funds that were considered in the past alternative transportation funds and focusing them on the bike and walkability improvement projects that I think are increasingly important as we go forward and meet our objectives. So just an observation.
Secretary Kelly, so well said. And I believe you have to step out for another meeting at 3:45, but thanks for your leadership on combining these programs. I think it's a brilliant way for the state to proceed in a lot more thoughtful way as well. Commissioner Medaffer, I think you wanted to weigh in?
Thank you very much. And I appreciate Secretary Kelly's comments. When I was on the San Diego City Council, actively supported Safe Routes to School, very important aspect, especially in the inner city neighborhoods that I represented. I understand also the frustration that Commissioner Gilmetti has, and it isn't so much, I don't think, an attack on your specific, what you're trying to do. The reality is dollars are scarce. I would subscribe to the thought that at some point in the future, as the CTC and frankly the legislature looks at other opportunities, whether it's state, local, funding, whether it's a vehicle, miles traveled, whether it's anything, that at the same time we would be supporting efforts that you are working on, that you would support efforts that we're working on when it comes to improving our transportation network. And I think Chair Gardino says it best. I can't say it exactly the way he says it, but, hey, usually to have a good bike lane, you got to have a road alongside to work as well. To have good transit lanes, you've got to have the infrastructure to support that. And quite frankly, in this state right now, we aren't making those investments. And so we're kind of grabbing at scraps. We're grabbing at times that have gone past. But from a policy standpoint, and your presentation today was outstanding, and I personally support it. I think it's something that we need to keep in the framework of everything as we move forward to have a transportation system that works not only for goods movement, not only for freight movement, not only for the economy of the state, but also for kids getting to school, to reduce childhood obesity, and so many important things that Safe Routes to School subscribes to.
Thank you, Commissioner Medaffer. Any other commissioners want to weigh in on this topic? Obviously, it was very timely, and I want to thank you again for a thoughtful presentation and for the excellent data. I have a few comments and a couple of questions, if I may.
Okay.
First, I have a vivid memory, as Commissioner Gilmetti does, of going with my big brothers to the fire station as a kid to get that license on my bike. I mean, I still remember that, and it was a positive memory, too. I don't even know what they did with the couple of dollars that it was. I have no idea what that was used for.
Pizza, probably. It was the firehouse, right?
But, you know, on a construction worker father's salary with a stay-at-home mom and 4 little boys to feed, it was not a rich household, but it was a small investment that we were all making for a very positive cause. I think the frustration we all combined have is when it comes to transportation, we're fighting over the crumbs rather than growing the pie. And I'm under a belief that we're all in this together. To the extent we can, let's all contribute and grow the pie. So first I want to make an offer. As somebody who cycles about 10,000 miles a year, about 5,000 on my daily commute, I hope I put I hope I peddle what I preach. If it would ever help for me to go to your group or other groups and say, hey, come on, we all need to do our part in addition to the sales taxes and or property taxes that we all pay. I would be happy to be Daniel going into the lion's den if it's not going to be well received. So that's an offer, should you ever find it of any value. Second, we need to leverage limited resources. And we have this 3-year opportunity under the Active Transportation Program to make a real difference. I'm hoping it's not just a 3-year effort. And if we do this right, if we really leverage limited resources, then hopefully it will have a year 4, 5, 6, et cetera, into the future. But we've really got to do it right. We've got to show that we delivered in these first 3 years. And that's going to mean the matching funds and everything else to get as much out of what seems like a lot of money but really isn't in a state of 39 million people to go as far as we can. The other question I just wanted to ask, this is a simple one. Can you send your slides either to our staff or to us individually? Because I think if we had soft copy versions of these slides, we could make better use of them and help you more.
Sure.
Good, thank you. And I just want to underscore your point around congestion as well as greenhouse gas emissions near schools. I live in the small town of Los Gatos in Silicon Valley, and if you want to see traffic jams, be around at 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning and 2 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because you're right. No one, even though they live within about a mile, very few walk or bike to school anymore, and it's all these folks with their cars dropping off kids that most of them shouldn't be there. So when we can make a change in those families and kids' behaviors, we're going to have a huge impact on greenhouse gas emissions and traffic congestion that hits us all where we have communities where there are schools. Because it's not just the school traffic, it's everyone behind them as well. With that, my last question. In a lot of communities, they're having better bike lanes that are more visually clear, and that's a plus. More and more communities, though, are doing paint in the whole bike lane. Paint when it's wet is really dangerous. Help me to understand why we're making such a dangerous decision on painting thoroughly bike lanes.
I can't speak to you specifically about the paint in the green bike lanes. That's not a project that we work on. I think it might be up to the community, and community by community, some are not making a good choice on that. I'm sorry that I can't speak to that. I could get you some more information, but I agree with you. I bike quite a bit, and I would also be concerned about the slick paint. So I'm hoping that there is some investigation going on for more paint with better traction.
Great. I mean, visually appealing is great, but skidding out on your bike in the rain because it was wet
because it was
an issue.
paint. It doesn't seem like cyclists thought of this idea at all. So the more you can promote people, yeah, make something visually appealing, but don't do it with paint across it to kill us when we're cycling in the rain. With that, if there are no other commissioner comments, I think we've all benefited from this. But Mitch, do you want the final word?
Oh, I just wanted to note that state law leaves bicycle licensing decision up to cities and counties.
I think it does.
Forgive me one more time, Mitch?
The state law leaves bicycle licensing decisions up to cities and counties.
Okay. It's good to know. Great. Thank you. Of course, we can always try to change the law.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. That was really helpful. We're going to go to item number 66 because we have someone who needs to catch a flight. If that's okay with everyone, we're going to switch to item 66.
Oh, was that 67? 67? 67?
You know what? It would even be better if we made it 67. Let's do this. I think this is either, is this Norma or Rachel who's making this report?
I'd be happy to do this.
Or
First.
Mitch, yes.
And I'll let the department have the last word.
Or Stephen Keck.
Item 67 is a request for supplemental funds. This is on Route 198 in Kings and Tulare County. This is a CMIA and STIP project. Some commissioners may recall when we had a town hall in that area, we took a tour and drove by this site, and they pointed out the nesting birds and noted the impact and delays they were having because of those nesting birds. In September 2012, they came and requested, and the commission allocated $1 million in supplemental funds because of the delay caused by the nesting birds. The cost ended up being greater than that. They thought they would be able to cover the cost in penalties that they withheld from the contractor, but they ended up having to, in fact, pay some of those fees to the contractor. So they are coming and requesting $475,000 to close out this contract. Staff recommends approval of this allocation.
That was a motion by Commissioner Assemi. Was there a second? Second by Commissioner Taglioni. Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And that moves. Thank you, Mitch.
It's a lot of money for nesting birds.
Let's go back to where we were, and that's item 24. Laura and Katrina.
Commissioners, agenda item 24 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the State Route 140 Ferguson Slide Permanent Restoration Project in Mariposa County. As a bit of background, in April of 2006, a series of rock slides closed to State Route 140. In August of 2006, a temporary detour was completed, and the route was reopened with limited access. In January 2014, Caltrans approved a final EIR for a permanent solution which will restore full access on State Route 140. The EIR identified significant unavoidable impacts to aesthetics, biological and cultural resources, and geology and soils. Caltrans adopted a statement of overriding considerations, finding that the project benefits outweigh the impacts. Staff recommends that the Commission accept the EIR, findings and overriding considerations, and approve the project for future consideration of funding. We would gladly entertain any questions.
Laura, thank you. I think there's going to be several on this. Let's start with Commissioner Gilmetti.
This is embarrassing. I mean, this thing happened in 2006. I was on the commission, and it's taken us 8 years to get an environmental impact report done?
Yes.
What's happened with you guys?
I can answer that. The place that this happened on Highway 140 in Mariposa County is right next to a wild and scenic river, and there are a lot of environmental issues related to that. We were not allowed to go over the wild and scenic river permanently with a bridge. We were attempting to go through with either a tunnel or what's called a rock shed, and there's a limestone salamander there. There's no take for the limestone salamander allowed, so we ended up having to get legislation to allow us to actually have an incidental take for the limestone salamander. It took until 2012 to go back and forth to finally get legislation approved. We then had to go back out with the environmental again and get this, ultimately a rock shed is what we're going to be doing, get that approved. We're going forward with that. We hope to be in construction by 2015. We are actually doing an initial construction project to remove the rocks so we can do geotechnical boring. But yes, it's been a long and challenging
Well, this was an
process.
emergency job.
I agree it's an emergency job, and unfortunately, from the environmental standpoint, there are certain things we still had to go through. And
Federal rules or state rules?
these are federal and state rules, yeah.
And we couldn't
But
get the feds to move any faster? Is that slow, Vince?
No, it's a requirement, well, yeah, but it's the requirement of we could not take any of the limestone salamander.
I understand that, but it took 8 years to figure it out?
No, we were working back and forth with them, but it took a long time to be able to get the legislation in place to allow us to do the take.
I think I know this route. This is the one right next to the Merced River going into Yosemite, right?
That's correct.
The rock slide as you drive into the park on the right-hand side.
Yes, that's right. There's 2 bridges that are temporary bridges that you have to go around.
Right, that you wait 10 or 15 minutes for the cars to come and then you go in it,
Yes, that's correct.
emitting greenhouse gases and everything else as you go. When the rock slide happened, didn't they all fall on the limestone salamander? And
I'm sure that is true.
Probably crushed a few.
Pretty soon,
Yes.
humans are going to be the endangered species.
We did a temporary bridges, and then we had to go back and fix the bridges to allow bus travel, because originally some of the buses couldn't go through. So it's been a very challenging process for the department.
Rachel, thank you. I think there are other questions. Commissioner Madaffer?
Yeah, I'm only going to be a little facetious, but when they remove the temporary facilities, are there any habitat or species that might be endangered in removing the temporary facilities?
I would have to check on that.
I'm
If
just
there's
kidding. I'm just-
Some bird nest.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, maybe
I read
bird nests, yes.
I read the staff report, and I see there's temporary facilities that have been built, and it's been since '06, so you never know what might be, could cause problems.
Move the birds.
Other commissioner comments?
We're getting punchy.
All right, is this an action item? This is an action item. Well, it's for 8 years it's been an inaction item, but we'll see if we can make it an action item today. Is there a motion? Move it by Tablioni, second by Madaffer. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And by the way, Rachel, none of that was aimed towards you. I think you share and our frustration that 8 years later this is an emergency. If I call anyone for emergency help, I hope they'll come quicker than 8 years.
Probably not.
Thank you all. Okay. We're going to go to information items. Stephen Muller.
Yes, Commissioners. The next 4 agenda items, 25 through 28, are information items deemed by staff not to raise any issue. We will not be doing any presentation unless requested by a commissioner.
Anyone requesting any? Seeing none, we're going to go to consent calendar. Stephen?
Yes, Commissioners. The next 22 items, 29 through 50, are consent calendar items. There's only one thing I have to note under item 38. There are 2 letters for the Katati Park and Ride lot. They don't have anything to do with this item. They were inadvertently inserted there because at that point in time we thought it was something because it was in the same county. With that, staff recommends that you approve the consent calendar.
Sir, a motion by Commissioner Tablioni. Second by Commissioner Alvarado. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Stephen. Let's go to policy matters. Still, Stephen's mic is on, and 51.
Item 51, Commissioners, is a amendment to the TCIF program. We are adding the Fairfield-Vacaville Intermodal Station to the program. We recommend your approval.
Move approval.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Gilmetti, a second by Commissioner Tablioni. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. 52, Stephen?
Yes, Commissioners. 52 is also a TCIF action. We are approving baseline agreements for the Natoma Overhead Widening Project and for the State Route 99 ramp metering project. Staff recommends approval.
Motion? Sorry, I threw myself off on that one. Commissioner Asimi makes the motion. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Inman. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes. Juan, 53.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, item 53 is an action item. It's an amendment to the Proposition 1B Intercity Rail Program. This amendment will remove savings from a completed project and take the savings and program them to a new project. Staff recommends approval of the amendment.
That was a motion by Taglioni and a second by Madaffer. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes. 54. Stephen?
Yes, Commissioners. Item 54 is the renewal of the telecommunication wireless licensing program. The Commission established this program as an offshoot of the airspace leasing program. It's been running on a 5-year renewal cycle. Most of the changes in the past cycles and this cycles have been administrative in nature. At this point in time, the Department is requesting that we change the cyclicity of this program, put it on a 10-year cycle. Right now, the program and the master licensing agreements are running on a 5-year cycle. The site licensing agreement are running on a 15-year cycle, which is kind of confusing to the industry out there. If we do it all on one 10-year cycle, it would be great. The only thing we would keep on a 5-year cycle is the master matrix with the fee schedule, and that should be renewed every 5 years. And there is a resolution under Attachment D, and one thing that I would have to indulge you is that we need to add in a whereas clause and therefore resolve clause for the 5-year renewal of the matrix on the licensing fees. With that, staff recommends your approval.
Move approval.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Gometti, second by Commissioner Asimi. Conversation? Seeing none? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? And that passes. Sure. Commissioner Madaffer is abstaining from that vote. He wanted it on a cycle. He wanted it on a unicycle instead. No. Moving on.
If I could, Mr. Chair, I should probably state for the record that I have a client that is in the distributed antenna system, so I probably should not even be voting on this item number 54, just in abundance of caution to avoid any conflict of interest.
I'll leave the room.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for letting us know that, and we're going to move on to item 55. Laurel Jansen?
Yes, Commissioners, this is an item for notice, a STIP amendment to delete STIP funding for the Plumbago Road Bridge Replacement Project in Sierra County. This is being done because they've discovered they can use 100% Highway Bridge Program funds, so the project will continue to move forward. Again, this is here for notice. It will be brought back for action next month, and it will likely be on the consent calendar.
Any questions of Laurel? Moving on to item 56. Juan?
Thank you. Commissioners, item 56 is an action item. It's a financial allocation for shop projects. This is an allocation of two shop minor projects for $1,215,000. Staff recommends your approval.
Motion by Taglioni, second by Commissioner Alvarado. Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? It passes. Juan? 57?
57 is also an action item. It is also a financial allocation for shop projects. This is the monthly allocation for shop projects program, for project program in the shop. The department has these projects ready to proceed and is requesting an allocation of $392,865,000 for 37 shop projects. Staff recommends your approval.
It's a motion by Commissioner Taglioni, seconded by Commissioner Alvarado. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Stephen Mahler, item 58.
Yes, Commissioners. Item 58 is a request to allocate $13.8 million to the Park Presidio Parkway P3 project. And I need to make a note here that this is not an increase to the project. The project was budgeted for you at a certain dollar amount, but there was a risk reserve in that budget, and the department is asking for access to the risk reserve to the tune of $13.8 million to cover some costs. One of the costs is $1.8 million for conditions that differed from whenever the developer, Golden Lake Partners, made their bid on the project. There was a 12 kV PG&E line that was located where they need to build their facilities. At the time when they were making a bid, that volt line was not there. There was also a change in Phase 1. The tunnel that was being built at Phase 1 had internal shoring, but it was change ordered into having tiebacks. Now the tiebacks are in the way of the tunnel for the Phase 2, and those needed to be removed. Also, they encountered some archaeological prehistoric situations, and that wasn't known until they started digging. So those costs are about $1.8 million. The rest of the monies basically fall into other categories of really basically staff and oversight conditions. When the Golden Lake Partners bid the project, before they bid the project, the department estimated the project would take about 33 months to construct. It's actually, when they did the bid, turned out to be 39 months, so there's a 6-month period that you need to have Caltrans staff to be on the job longer. That's about $2.5 million worth. Then in the Golden Lake Partners was to coordinate with third parties, namely Park Presidio. Those negotiations did not go very well. The department had to step in and start negotiating with the Park Presidio, and that cost was about $1.3 million. The rest of the stuff is basically submittals and review of submittals. That's about $8 million. Some of this is document control workload. And there was department estimated about 8 cycles for reviewing and approving plans. It turned out to be about 24 cycles. And there were other quality control issues and others, and some of it is, the bill for that is about $8 million. Staff is recommending that you approve this request, and if you have any questions, Bijan Sartipi and Komi Ajisi are here to answer the questions.
I think there may be several.
Mr. Chairman, before we go any farther, I'm going to step out and recuse myself, as my law firm represents a party that's involved in the JV on P3.
How many commissioners want to leave with Dario? For any reason that they can think of. Okay, just one. I think we have several hands up. Why don't we start with Commissioner Madaffer, and then Commissioner Gilmetti and Commissioner Inman.
Thank you very much. What was the original source of this May 2010 approval of $1.4 billion? It's billion, right? Am I reading this right?
Yes, it's billion.
I know it says 1,400 million. I don't know why they're just afraid to use the B word. But $1.4 billion for this project. What was the original source?
The source is the state highway account.
SHOP.
Yes.
So,
well, some of this is availability payments. That's off the top, not from the SHOP.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's my frustration in seeing this is, and I guess, again, I know I'm new here, but I haven't seen too many $13 million SHOP projects. Maybe it's a routine thing. I don't know, but it just seems to me as though if the definition of the State Highway Operation and Protection Program is to try to maintain if something's broken and fix it, at least that's been my impression. Wasn't this a full-scale project, an improvement, or was this falling under the definition of SHOP from the beginning?
This was a replacement of the approaches to the Golden Gate Bridge that were seismically and structurally deficient that needed to be replaced.
So wouldn't that have been normally just a regular full-scale project that wouldn't have fallen under SHOP?
It started that way, yes, but then it was split into 2 phases. Phase 1 finished off as a regular SHOP project, and Phase 2 became a P3 partnership project.
And is 13 million a normal number for a SHOP project?
You mean, are you talking about the 13, the additional money that they need? Sure.
How often does it come up that big?
On a $1 billion project?
Well, on a $1 billion project, I understand. All right. It just seems to me as though this, I understand the request. I've read this thing several times. All I could say is, wow, it seems like a lot of money, and it seems like it could have been better managed.
Rachel, it looks like you're leaning in. Did you want to respond as well?
Well,
Or Norma?
I just wanted to add, I mean, this is part of the project cost. It's already included, and we're just trying to assess or access the reserve. I don't think $13 million on a $1.4 billion project is unreasonable.
Okay, well then I guess, Norma, based on that, I will ask another question. I wasn't going to, but it talked about, somewhere I read in here that most of this was for staffing. 8.1 million for staffing. Did I read that right? Is that something that just wasn't forecast or budget? It doesn't sound like, I mean, does this get back to the 3,500 employees that...
No, it's not that part of it. The project is taking longer than we had anticipated. There were delays, but I think Bijan can speak to this issue a little in more detail.
Good afternoon.
Bijan, welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, my name is Bijan Sartipi. I'm the District Director for Caltrans in District 4 in Bay Area. The item in front of you for consideration of access to the reserve from the project, as staff outlined, has two elements. One is the capital cost, which is the site condition, basically. And the other is the additional staff engagement in the project in order to deliver the project. That is outlining a couple of different reasons within the item itself, as you have in front of you. One is on the length of the overall of the project. The project went through litigation that was delayed by about 12 months. So during that period of time, we actually mitigated that by allowing the designer to continue design, because the first portion of it was the design build. We provided money for them to actually do the design of the work, so we can actually make progress. But the bid came in 6 months longer than we had anticipated and budgeted for. And that period of time has a cost associated for the staff to oversee the overall development of the project through construction, design and construction. There's another element to that, which is the third party. This is a very unique site that we're working in, which has a number of federal agencies, specifically the Presidio Trust, which is the National Historic Park, that has a lot of rules and regulations that has to be followed. And we, within the contract, have obligation to engage at certain levels with the Presidio Trust to continue making progress for the developer. We have elevation of issues as it comes up, and we're mitigating that by getting more engaged, making sure that the project doesn't get stalled, because that has much greater ramification than the support costs that we're investing in the project in order to actually manage the entire billion-dollar project that is ongoing. We are making good progress in the field, but it does require much greater involvement by our staff, as we had budgeted for, in order to make sure that the permits are issued in time, that the issues are resolved in time, and that we are assisting and working with the developer in order to make sure that the project does get progress. That costs money. That costs money for staff to actually do that work. That's a mitigation cost. And the risk on the other side of it would be much, much greater if this is not done.
Bijan, thank you. We did have other commissioners who wanted to ask questions or comment on this. Commissioner Gomedi, and then Commissioner Inman, and then Commissioner Assimi.
Bijan, I'm just going to go through the numbers. You've got $1.8 million for relocation of a 12 kV line and the tiebacks and the archaeological stuff. I think I understand it. I'm a little miffed that the contractor didn't know about the tiebacks. I mean, it was stuff that was, you should have had as-builts for that. But anyway, I'm going to get by that. On the oversight, it went from 33 months to 39 months, and you're asking for another $2.5 million for that. But the one I'm really having a heart attack on is this $8.1 million. Basically, I read it's for additional plan checks. You had 8 reiterations of design packages budgeted, and it actually was 24. I can't believe that you spent $8.1 million for 16 additional plan checks. I mean, I could run my whole operation in my company for 2 years based on $8.1 million. So I'm just having a heart attack over the size of that number. And I realized that, you know, they had some conversations with the trust, et cetera. I mean, is any of this money going to come back from the contract? We have a P3 here. We're supposed to have protection on this.
Well, we do have a P3, and there are some obligation for the developer to actually do some of this work. But as they are delayed in getting their permits, they are submitting what they have developed piecemeal rather than in more concise packages. And as things come in piecemeal, and as we review them and comment on them, when the next set of reviews comes in, the next set of documents come in, we would have to double review the documents that comes in. So it is not the most efficient way of doing it, but it is keeping the project moving and keeping the progress of the project itself. Within the contract, we do have obligation for elevation of issues, and we are responding to that, which is working with the trust, working with other agencies that require to give them the permit in order for them to actually obtain them. They need to get on site to do investigation. If that gets delayed, they do design work, they submit it to us. When they finish investigation, that may change some of the plans, and we have to re-review the plans that they've submitted. We have budgeted for 8 cycles of submittal, and these submittals are large submittals. And right now, we're working on 24. We are having meetings every single day of the week with our staff. So we have additional staff that's actually working on this. And the majority of this is also managing the risk of not doing it. So the risk of the project stalling and not getting constructed, and the permits are not issued, and the capital costs associated with that and the delay costs associated with that would be much greater than the investment we're making in the support costs in order to make sure that the project is a quality project. Part of that is quality assurance. We're doing that both in construction and in design to make sure that the project is done as it is supposed to, and that the taxpayer get the product that at the end they were supposed to get. So we're doing quality assurance, we're doing quality control.
I understand all that. It's the dollar amount. And as a side question, has GLC submitted any claims on this project?
There are notice of claims submitted by GLC, yes.
And what do they total?
I don't have a tally of all of the notice of claim.
Approximately.
They're large numbers.
Over 100 million?
If you add them, yes.
So much for approving a P3.
But those are just notices of potential claim. Those are not necessarily obligation of the department to pay.
Commissioner Inman and then Commissioner Asimi.
So I too kind of question if we thought we'd have 8 and we have 24, that's 3 times as many. So I think the important thing for all of us in this is lessons learned, because I'm assuming that there probably will be a P3 somewhere in our combined futures. So I think that we need to make real sure that we are learning some lessons along this journey, and I'm not sure that we really understand, you know, we thought we'd have 8 and we have 24. I mean, that's a significant delta in terms of the variance. So I think we need to look at that and see what will we do differently, how could we learn. My question is, in the risk reserve, we started out at 36.8, and previously we'd drawn down 6.6 of that, and this request is for 13.8. So if my math's right, we're somewhere around 20 million in our risk reserve. Is that correct? So we're percentage completion, how much confidence do we have that that risk reserve is going to be enough to get us finished?
Well, I think the numbers that you have is close and is accurate. With respect to percent completion, overall we were 40% complete on site. There are different elements of the project that are at different level of development. With respect to design and portions of construction, I can actually cite a few of those for you with respect to the progress that has been made. If I can get the right.
Well, that's okay. Just my point is, with this request will be approximately 50% of our total risk reserves. So, you know, we got to be careful.
Thank you, Commissioner Edmond. Commissioner Assimi.
Thank you, Chair. 13.8 is a lot of money, but in perspective, it's not a lot of money compared to 1.4 billion. I'm more concerned about the claims that you just talked about, the over $100 million, and I'm waiting for that shoe to drop down the road. But again, out of yes, there's been challenges and issues with this project, but again, 13.8 million compared to 1.4 billion, is that 1%? Roughly, and I think, where are we at with the Gerald Desmond Bridge cost overruns? And that was like several $100 million.
The Gerald Desmond is about 200
I know,
million.
but the anticipated utility relocation?
About 200 million.
200 million. I guess the point I'm making is 13.8 million is a lot of money, but it's I'm more interested in where the claims are going when we're going to be hearing that item down the road. But I'm recognizing on a project of this magnitude and this size, we will have cost overruns. Although this is within the reserves. So,
building on that statement, if I may, Bijan, I think it would be helpful for the Commission if for our June meeting, you and your team just let us know the total of the claims to date.
We can do that.
Great. Because my sense is when you say well over 100 million, it is well over 100 million.
I think we need to make sure that we realize notices of potential claim and the numbers associated with it are very rough.
Completely understand.
And those are just notices. That does not in any form or shape means that we agree with any one of them.
Agreed. I still would like to have some visibility on the numbers.
We'll share that information.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Commissioner Arp, and then Commissioner Alvarado.
I think Commissioner Alvarado had his hand up first. I will defer to him.
Okay. A before E.
Well, I'm looking at this thing, and we're coming in now for a request for $13.8 million, but it seems that we've already spent it. Right? All the work has been done. Now we're coming in for a request.
No. We have not spent this money. We did have budget for support. We had about $16 million budget for support. So we're spending that. We are forecasting to the end of construction. So what we're asking for is budget in order to support the project for the life of it to the end of construction.
So we haven't spent this money yet.
No, we have not spent the $13.8 million.
But the money didn't come out of another pot. Because I'm looking at this, I'm kind of looking at this whole thing. So if we approve this money, is it going to repay another pot?
We are asking for allocation of this money from the project's risk reserve. So the project does have a risk reserve, which is similar to a contingency on a regular design bid build.
Right, but I'm trying to get my arms around this. I mean, I have trouble with the cost too. But as when I read this, it almost seemed like we've already spent the money because there's a lot of detail in here. Detail that should have been up front. So I'm kind of questioning at what point this should have come before the commission prior to now. So that's why I'm asking this question. Have we spent money from a pot, and this money will go, if this is approved today, will this money go to replace the pot, or have we already spent money out of the contingency fund to cover this, and now, because this is almost like coming in after the fact.
No, we have not spent the $13.8 million. We have not.
We are getting close to depleting the
end of this
budgeted amount.
End of this month, we will be pretty much at the end of the budget authority that we have. Beyond that, we need the additional money in order to carry us for the remainder of the life of the project to the end of construction. So we have not spent this money from another pot to be asking for this. Our burn rate on the support costs has been much greater than we had anticipated because of the effort that goes into the work that we're doing.
Well, to my commissioner colleagues, the good news is we have this room until 5:30. The bad news is that could be 5:30 a.m. If we keep going. But Commissioner Arp?
The way I was reading this was that regardless of how we might individually feel about the $13 million and its validity, unlike many times, we're getting enough notice here on this that at least you're coming to us. You're asking for our authority to dip into the reserve fund, which has been set aside for things like this. Now we can argue the merits of whether this is one of those things. But at least I appreciate the fact that I'm able to look at it with enough advance warning instead of having you guys come to it, well, whoever come to us after the fact and say, look, we've already made the deal and we're coming to you to for the supplemental funds that we need in order to finalize, and pay off and close out the project. So from that standpoint, I am inclined to support this. I do have a question about your reference on the claims. I don't know what our legal. I don't know at what point claims become when we should be apprised of them. I think earlier the better, but I don't know at what point we should be formally reviewing those. So I do have a question to staff on that. And that's pretty much what I have to say.
Great. Well, and I think that's a good segue, Commissioner Arp, into finding out if we have a motion on this item. Do we have a motion?
I would move to support the expenditure of this allocation.
Commissioner Arp's motion. Is there a second? And there's a second by Commissioner Taglioni. Further discussion? Okay. Let's see how this goes first. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
The enthusiasm is amazing. All those opposed?
No.
Okay. And any abstentions? Okay, so we need at least 6 votes on this item, and that sounds like it's an 8-to-1 vote then. Thank you. And again, for our June meeting, if we could get that sense on the outstanding claims. Thank you. Thank you, staff. Okay. At some point, thank you. If we could get Commissioner Frommer. We're going to move on to item 59. Juan Guzman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, item 59 is an action item. It's a financial allocation for a state-administered earmark project. The allocation is for $2 million received under Safety Lou, and staff recommends the approval of the allocation.
Motion by Tavoloni, second by Commissioner Madaffer. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes. Item 60, Laurel Jansen.
Yes, Commissioners, items 60 through 64 are allocations for STIP projects. Item 62 is 61 is a request for border infrastructure program funds that are treated as similar to STIP funds. These were programmed earlier in the consent calendar. And under item 64, there are some items on the change list. So given that information, staff recommends you approved items 60 through 64.
Move approval.
Second.
And there was a motion by Commissioner Madaffer, seconded by Commissioner Taglioni. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes. Thank you. Let's go to 65, please. Oh, with 65 is which are on. Thank you, Andre, for that reminder. Item 66, Laurel.
Yes, Commissioners, this is an action item to allocate $180,000 in SHOP funds in order to close out the construction contract for the rehabilitation of 3 bridges on Route 91 in Los Angeles County. This is an increase of 7.7%. The funds are needed to cover increases in quantities of bridge deck polyester concrete, additional work in removing existing bridge deck surface, and extra work to smooth the transition from the bridge surface to the roadway surface. Basically, these surfaces were a little bit thicker than anticipated, and so site conditions were a little bit different. Staff recommends your approval of this item.
Okay, that was a motion by Commissioner Tavoloni with a second by Commissioner Burke. Questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
We've already covered 67, so we'll move on to 68. Mitch.
Item 68 is a request for supplemental funds. This is on Route 50 in Yolo County. This is a STIP project, and the request is for $450,000. This is an instance in where there were two projects in the same location. It was anticipated that there would not be a conflict, but in fact there was a conflict. That led to increased costs on this project. Ideally, since it was realized earlier, it seems like this should have come to the Commission before closeout, but nonetheless, here it is. The department has some lessons that they believe they've learned from this and applied to other projects, so staff recommends approval of this item.
There's a motion by Commissioner Tavoloni. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Assimi. Questions? Yes, Commissioner Gilmetti.
Maybe I'm getting cranky in my old age. But I've been up here 11 years and I hear the same story. And I'm not trying to pick on Jody in District 3, but it's prevalent everywhere we go. And we say we've learned our lessons, and yet it keeps coming back to us. It's the same story. It's like a Groundhog Day. It repeats itself.
I guess every project is unique, but in this case, there was a median barrier project, and the Harbor Boulevard project anticipated that the contractor would be able to excavate fill on the outside. But when we actually thought there was enough room when we got out there, in order to have a safe work zone for the median barrier project, it took a little more room than we thought it would, which pushed the traffic out, and there wasn't enough room for the contractor to excavate fill in the areas he anticipated doing. So it didn't come to you earlier because we thought we had enough money in the project to settle all the claims. So this is a very small amount, $450,000, to finish settling all the claims. Otherwise, it would have come to you earlier, but we were anticipating being able to do it within the project budget.
I guess Jody, I'm just frustrated that time and time again we have, project designers, et cetera, who aren't taking all these things into consideration. And so it comes back and bites us in the you-know-where. Again, I'm not picking on you. This happens in every district. Joe and I sound like broken records up here on these supplementals all the time.
We were able to apply these lessons to the design-build project in Sacramento on the Pioneer Bridge with respect to its nearness to the WX freeway project that's ongoing right now.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Arp?
I'm not quite as old as Commissioner Gilmetti, but I am, there are times when I feel as grumpy. In this particular case, I did review this with Jody, and the clearances that the clearances that they were working with were incredibly tight. I mean, you're talking about a foot or whatever, and so it's I can see where construction crews would probably not be able to really anticipate exactly what they were dealing with till they were out there and dealing with it. And given the small the amount of the money on here, I think. I'm in favor of going ahead and improving this one. I think they did all they could probably do with respect to what they were dealing with.
Okay. If there are no other mics that are lit up, why don't we see if this passes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Jody, could you stand back up at the mic, please? Jody, how long have you served our state at Caltrans?
34 years.
Thank you for that. When are you retiring?
At the end of June. This will be my last commission meeting.
Right. Will you all join me with a standing ovation to Jody's 34 years?
Thank you very much.
Oh, she's coming right back up. Okay. Okay, we can always rescind that applause based on what she has to say. Jody, thank you again for all that you've done for our state. We appreciate it. And let's go to item 69, Mitch and Jody.
This is a request for supplemental funds. This is on a shop project on Route 50 in Sacramento County. They're requesting $2.944 million. There are a number of reasons for this cost, a number of reasons outlined for this cost increase. They're related to a change in the staging of the contract that was proposed by the contractor. The biggest single piece in the list is additional 6 incentive days because the work is going to get done earlier. There are some impacts for increased transit, and this pays for some of that in addition to the cities of Sacramento and West Sacramento for detours. In terms of the transit, what will actually get paid is only what will get used. So if they contract for a certain number of buses or a certain number of light rail cars in addition, and those aren't in fact used, then we won't end up paying all that. But that said, the request is for $2.944 million. Staff recommends approval.
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Tablioni, a second by Commissioner Arp. Are there questions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Jody. By the way, Jody came to Caltrans when they still had a rule that they would hire people at 8 years old. So thank you again for your work, Jody. Let's move on to item 70. Juan Guzman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, item 70 is an action item. It's a financial allocation for Proposition 1B Intercity Rail Project. This is the project you programmed earlier on the agenda, and the request for the allocation is for $1,305,000 for improvements on the Capitol Corridor. Staff recommends your approval.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Medaffer, a second by two male voices on this side. Was that Commissioner Fromer? Okay, great. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes unanimously. Item 71, Teresa.
Item 71 is Item 71 is an action item. This is a financial allocation for a HRCSA program. It is the San Mateo Bridges in the San Mateo County. Staff recommends your approval.
Boy, that was a tie, but I'm going with Tablioni because he's so handsome. Commissioner Tablioni for the motion. Who is the second? Commissioner Burke, I'm told. Okay. Conversation? None? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes. Laurel Jansen, item 72.
Yes, Commissioners, this is an action item to allocate the second half of the federal dollars available for the local assistance program. The first half was allocated in October 2013. So this half is $752,789,000. In addition to that, they have August redistribution funds, $57,795,000 and change, and some Tiger grant funds, $17,424,000 and change. So their total federal funds requested at this time is $828,009,275. In addition to that, they are asking for $250,000 in state funds. Normally, all of the state funds for this program, the local assistance lump sum, are allocated in June. Last June, they got their allocation, but there was some additional funds added in by AB 101 a little bit later than that, and so that was the $250,000, and they're asking for that now. Staff recommends your approval of this item.
It's a motion by Commissioner Tavoloni, a second by Commissioner Medaffer. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes. 73, Juan.
Commissioners, item 73 is an action item. It's a financial allocation for 2 STIP transit projects in the amount of $47,120,000. Staff recommends your approval.
Forgive me, I didn't recognize the voice on the motion. Commissioner Assemi made the motion. Was that Commissioner Medaffer? No, Commissioner Alvarado making the second. Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? That passes. 74, Juan.
Commissioners, item 74 is also an action item, also a financial allocation. This is to the Bay Area Ferry Operations Program. This is the annual allocation for the operations. It's $3,179,000. Staff recommends your approval.
Move it.
Okay, a motion by Commissioner Fromer, a second by Commissioner Assemi. Questions? None? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? That passes. 75-1.
Thank you. Commissioners, I would like to take items 75 through 82 together. Those are the time extension. The staff recommendations are shown on the spreadsheet provided to you. I'll note a couple of changes. On the change list, on item 75, projects 2, 3, 4, and 5 have been withdrawn. Item 80, the item has been withdrawn. With those changes, staff recommends approval of the actions 75 through 82 as recommended on the spreadsheet.
Motion by Commissioner Tavoloni, second by Commissioner Gilmetti. Question by Commissioner Madaffer?
Yes, thank you. Just a question on this. When I was reading these different tab items, consistent with the conversation we've had earlier today, do any of these time extensions end up ultimately costing more money to where you'll come back saying, well, because there was additional time?
For local projects, local agencies have to bear the cost, the additional cost.
Okay.
On Caltrans projects, I would say it's not usual for them to come in and request supplementals for this kind of delay. It's just because the project has some issue with the contract award.
All right. And the reason I asked that question is on the prior item from the Presidio. I mean, the delay ended up costing all this extra money, and I just was curious as to whether or not we'll end up getting a allocation increase request. But thank you for the clarification.
Fantastic. This is that point in our commission meeting where if there are other... we haven't taken the vote. We only had a motion and a second. My apologies. It's brimming with anticipation now. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, those pass. Thank you, Juan. If there are matters that were not on our agenda that anyone would like to speak to in terms of public comment, now is your chance to do so. Seeing none?
Forever hold your peace.
All right, who guessed that we'd adjourn by 4:45? You're the winner. You did. You win. All right. Thank you all. This meeting is adjourned. Great job.